G'day, I'm Tim Neal from precisionagriculture.com.au. This is the first part of 6 sections on conservation agriculture, or no-till as some people call it. We're going to split it up into 6 sections, and the first section is really about why do we do no-till? You know, what is the science behind this technique, and is it really that important? And what sort of gains can I get out of this? So let's have a look now at some of the slides on why should I do no-till. So the next thing, I guess, is why do we do no-till, and what machinery do we need to do that? So looking at, we've done the economics, but some of the sort of 6 steps to no-till, some of the tines and press wheel. We won't talk much about row spacing, but it's a critical thing. And also tractor and tyre requirements. So why are we doing no-till? And this discussion came up yesterday. We talked a lot about organic carbons and carbon in soils. There's obviously a fair bit of interest out there about carbon and all the composts and teas and all that sort of stuff that's around at the moment. So it's generating quite a bit of interest. But the number one reason is we're trying to stop raindrop impact, aren't we? That's the number one thing, and stubble cover is the easiest way to do that. And as you know, in the Managing Stubble book here, you can see the different stubble levels that we're trying to aim for, but we're trying to aim for a minimum of 30% stubble cover. And really it's just to prevent that surface sealing and reducing raindrop impact. And 30% cover is shown when you look at the reduction in tonnes of soil loss. It does basically a rapidly declining sort of soil loss around about that 30% stubble cover. So you might have 50 tonnes per hectare soil loss when you've got 0 cover, and you might get much less than that when you start getting above 30% cover. So that line really starts to drop, flatten out after 30% cover, and that's why you hear in the media all the time about this magical 30% number. You wonder where they've got that from. It's essentially the research that was done 25, 30 years ago that showed that on slopey ground, if you had at least 30% cover, then the erosion was significantly reduced. So 30% cover, when you get your stubble guide, and you can get that off, you get the stubble guide off the internet as well, off the Grains BMP website. You can see 30% cover doesn't look like very much, but it's enough to significantly reduce soil erosion. So, and unfortunately, it won't be too long before that's, I think, is going to be legislated. And you're in a reef catchment, which means they're going to target you guys pretty heavily. So if you can beat them to it, I think that's a better way of going instead of trying to follow up. So that's where the magical number comes from of 30%. But if you're 29, it's not the end of the world. But you know what I mean? Like it's just a number. So what is stubble worth? This is again not from this district, but it's just to show. I don't know if anyone's been to the Liverpool Plains, but Ian Carter's a guy worth visiting. He's one of one of the best farmers in the district. And this is a yield map from his farm. And what do you think has happened here? This is a yield map, and so this is the lower yielding areas. What do you think might have happened in that area there? And there's actually a header fire in the paddock next door, right, over in the neighbours, and it spread into his paddock. And the yield difference is quite startling. If you look at the yields in those areas, it was down to 1.5 tonnes per hectare.
So that was just stubble that was burnt?
It was just stubble that was burnt, yeah, and it wasn't cultivated after that. So then he went back and planted that crop. And that's the yield of the result of the following crop. And just because there was no stubble cover, that was a yield reduction. And so even some areas of the paddock there were 4 tonnes per hectare, but most of us around that 3 tonnes. So essentially a halving in yield just as a result of that. And I know of other cases that are around that they're using yield data to prove the losses in court cases as a result of fires. So, you know, it's just not an isolated thing. So that just demonstrates really the value of stubble to Ian. I don't know if any of you have been to Condo? Yep. What do you? Condo's not the edge of the world, but I think you can see it from there. It's dry. It's a big heart country. I call it. You need a big heart to farm in Condobolin. But this is Roger Todd, one of our clients at Condo, and that's the weed he pulled off in '08. And there's bus tours of farms go through his place, and they say it's like an oasis in the desert. You know, it's beautiful red loam soils, but the problem is you're at Condo, which is a long way from any rainfall. So, but I was just talking to Roger the other day. Actually, they've cracked a big yield again this year after this season. But that's what you can achieve in a very dry environment with controlled traffic and no-till. And he's on a 12-metre system. People often ask about stubble cover and the longevity of stubble cover, and there's been a lot of talk lately about, you know, stubble digesters, and you have to work it in to make it break down and all those sort of issues. This is some work that was done at Kingaroy many years ago now, but Kingaroy DPI did this work, and looking at the actual weight of stubble rather than looking at, you know, when you see stubble you think it's all still there. What they did was they actually weighed the stubble. So they cut it and took samples over a period from up to 8 months. And the two lines there, the blue line is legume stubble, and the pink line is cereal stubble. And on the left-hand side here, you can see, it's a bit hard to see, but it's 3 tonnes to the hectare, 2 tonnes, and 1 tonne to the hectare. That's the graph. That's the sort of scale. So it all started at 3 tonnes per hectare of stubble, and then you look at the breakdown over time without incorporating it. You can see after 6 months, the cereal stubble's gone down to about 1 tonne per hectare. So essentially a 2/3 reduction in the weight of that stubble is gone, even though it's still standing. So where's it gone? It's gone down into the soil. All the microbes and bacteria and funguses have eaten it up, essentially left the shell, but it looks like it's all still there, but essentially it's not. 2/3 of it's disappeared in weight. And I think this is the big misnomer about, we have to cultivate our soil or stubbles to get them to break down. Within 6 months, 2/3 of that's disappeared. If you look at legume stubbles, they're even quicker to decline. The reason is that it's all to do with carbon to nitrogen ratios. So when you've got a lot of nitrogen, that the bugs are going to go nuts, because they've got a carbon source, they've got a nitrogen source, they're just going to proliferate. So the best thing you can do is feed these little things, and you don't have to put on microbes. Right? There's more microbes per gram of soil than you're ever going to apply in a boom spray. So all you've got to do is feed them and look after them, and the things that they like are carbon and nitrogen, and they like moisture as well. So when you get into systems that we crop more intensively, we've got more carbon and nitrogen in cycling around, the more they're going to proliferate. Longfellows, the reason we get mycorrhizal, VAM declining is because they've just got nothing to eat. So if we feed them and keep the carbon and nitrogen up to them and store more moisture, they're going to do a really good job. So you don't have to work stubble to get it to break down. The other thing that we often get about is evaporation losses from some stubble. Unfortunately, we can't do much about evaporation in Australia because our evaporation rate's triple what our rainfall is or something? Evaporation's 5 or 6 mils, 8 mils a day up here, maybe even 10 mils a day in summer. We don't get 10 mils a day in rainfall, do we? So our evaporation losses are huge in central Queensland, and unfortunately stubble cover doesn't do much to alleviate that. So this graph shows where they've studied, this was done by CSIRO. It's done quite a while ago now, you can see 1997, but in the end, like the bare reduced quicker at the start, but in the end the soil moisture in the top 10 centimetres was exactly the same on bare or not. I think stubble has a little bit of a role in wind, it reduces the wind, which reduces sort of evaporation a bit, but it doesn't really make much difference in the long run. So we've got to try and pump more water through the plant rather than just letting it evaporate. And if you look at the average, in an average summer fallow, what you'd store is only a small percentage. That's about 10 to 15% of the total rainfall you get is actually stored in the soil profile. It's a bit of a sad reality, and the thing is we can't, like I've said, we can't do much about this big blue bit, the evaporation. It's about 70%. We can't do much about it. So it works out about, I think it's 70% evaporation, about, I think 20% stored, on average and 10% runoff. And they're all average figures, but gives you an idea that we're fighting a bit of a losing battle with long fallowing and trying to store water over a long period of time. We've just got to use that water more effectively, and that's what these guys at Wowan are doing with increasing the cropping frequency. Just putting that through the plant.